Hi, it's odeean here. Today I've got MakeToys MTRM-08 Despotron from the remastered line, and this is their version of a Masterpiece Megatron G1 style. Here is Despotron in gun mode. I've got a few different versions of Megatron, so if you don't have a Masterpiece Megatron, I will compare it. But before looking at any of those comparisons, he looks pretty decent. I mean, it's obvious that the handle area, like the grip, is too wide, and it's forgivable. It does take away a little bit from the realism of it, but all in all, it looks pretty good. When your hand is wrapped around it, you might not necessarily notice it so much for looking at, but you can definitely feel the size is a bit too long. So just tactile speaking, it's not quite right. But I'm happy with the way that it looks. If anything, I think what I find slightly worse is the scope seems to be proportionally too small for me, and that's what my eye is drawn to. Maybe it's because I'm used to my other versions of Megatron, in particular the Masterpiece version. It has a huge scope on it. Perhaps that's the reason. Now, unlike my other ones here, the safety doesn't actually work. That's no big deal. I don't really care about that or anything. I just thought it'd be interesting to note that of the three that I've got, that does nothing. Flipping it around to the other side, you can see this slot in the side of the barrel here. This is a little bit ugly, so if you're going to look at it from that end, yeah, you get the screw holes and that line there, which is not fantastic. The trigger is not very good. Like, it doesn't feel like it's in a natural place, and it doesn't move in a natural way, and it doesn't feel like it's connected to anything. So, I mean, these are all minor flaws. Pretty happy overall with how it looks. Let's check out down that scope. You can see my shiny head there. Now you can't see through here. The plastic is too tinted to allow you to properly see anything when you put your eye on the scope. So it's really primarily for the robot mode cannon that has been designed, so you can get some kind of energy glow as light shines through it, not for scoping things out. So I'm going to go ahead and show Masterpiece Megatron. So this is the original Masterpiece Megatron, and it feels quite large, but even though it's like feeling large, it's very, very similar in size. If I overlay them like that, feels very similar. It actually feels more comfortable to hold. It's a little bit narrower up here, so my hand is quite large, and it's almost natural for me to grip that like that, whereas with Despotron it's just a bit too big. But all in all, it's not that much of a difference in the two. I mean, I like how on Masterpiece Megatron we have this machining. Like, it's not real obviously, but they've molded in these lines so it looks like a real machined piece of steel. That's a very nice touch. I like that. And as I mentioned before, the scope is just quite large in comparison. Like, look at that. Big difference. Look the same, pretty much the same, but just size-wise. One's huge, the other's not. Next up, for comparison, I've got and you can see he's already flopping apart here, which is one of the problems with this toy. I have Xtransbots Apollon, which I didn't get too long ago. It doesn't feel like too long ago. Maybe it's a year ago now, I don't know. But on its own, this gun mode is not so impressive, partly because it has a hard time staying together. The thickness of the grip here is just over the top, and when you look at it from the front like that, it's kind of ridiculous. He's a little bit gappy in this space. I mean, I think I've transformed it right, but there's a bit of a gap happening there. I applied this sticker, it doesn't come like that. He does have the moving safety, as I mentioned. This Apollon also has a slightly smaller scope compared to the Masterpiece. It's in line with MakeToys version. I mean, if I hold them both like this, it is still easier to hold Xtransbots Megatron just because of this width here. Looking at the materials, Apollon is kind of more plastic looking. It actually looks like silver paint, whereas some of this plastic up here, although I'm sure it is paint, looks more like it's just silver to begin with. You can see, look at that, that happens. His gun is just really, the whole concept of this attachment point is kind of shit. They would have been much better off just having a solid piece and giving up some of the flexibility in robot mode. The one thing that this has going for it, which gives it some advantage, is that it does come with the add-on pieces. So in the box, you get the silencer and the stock just as part of the standard toy. Oh, it's falling apart just a little bit. Now I know that with Masterpiece Megatron there are add-on kits you can get that give him those things as well. I have to hold it pretty far away, it's actually quite hard. I mean, that looks good. When you put the add-ons, I do like how that looks, and given that I don't really like to keep the gun mode very much of Megatron, I feel like it's a waste of toy. I'll probably keep Apollon in gun mode on my shelf, and maybe MakeToys is going to get the Prime robot mode Megatron spot. Now the first thing I wondered when I got this open was, am I going to be able to get the silencer onto Despotron from Apollon? And at first glance you think yes, because the diameter of this section is pretty much exactly the same as the diameter of this section. Now it won't go over the top because the end part of the muzzle is just too big. What I tried to do was unscrew this section and re-screw it together over there, but it will not go. I mean, I'm confident that you could force it to go, but the problem is some of these structures on the inside of that silencer would need to be gouged out, just filed in a bit, and given that I may resell this toy, I did not want to scratch it up and cut a hole in the plastic. But if you're fine with doing that, I do really think that you could get this over the top like that without having any exterior damage to the toy, and you could just keep it on him if you wanted. So here's Despotron out of the box. A nice close-up of his face there. It does look a lot like Megatron, and out of the Megatrons I've got, he actually looks the most like Megatron. I think MakeToys have gone and put some little extra bits of detail on his head just to show that it's theirs. I don't really know why they did that. The whole figure is very G1. I think the likeness is very good. The bucket shape of the head, and again I'm using a Note 5 here, which has a tendency to warp perspective a bit, but if you look at it from a natural point of view, the bucket shape on the top of his head is a really good likeness of Megatron. The faces are interchangeable, so this is the just plain face, emotionless, hard Megatron. You can pull off his helmet, and one of that face just popped off. You can see he's got no real head. Once the helmet comes off, all he's got is this stump. So I'm going to go and grab his maniacal laughing face, pop the helmet back on. Maybe not. It doesn't, I don't know. I mean, in toy form, it's always going to be hard to capture the essence of what we saw in the cartoon. Let's just pop that one off and put on the smirking face. Kind of. I feel like, maybe from this point of view, I feel like I've seen that in a few frames before. It's like he's having a devious thought. I mean, not bad. The final face is his teeth gritted. The lips stand out a little bit too much. You can see also that the eyes are nice shiny red. Now I'm just going to pick one of these up and show you the back. It's actually a red chromed piece of plastic that's just an insert for the eye. So here we've got him full on in his robot mode. It's a really good looking robot mode. I'm going to show some comparisons in a minute with other Megatrons that I've got. But before I get to that, he's got this slight stability issue, and it's partly to do with, like, you got kind of compound joint in there and it doesn't have that much friction. So I like to pose him with his legs just a little bit apart so it stops it from flopping like that. But it's not, I don't want to overstate the amount of floppiness, but it does quite regularly fall over. Just having a once around, they've very successfully integrated these gun mode parts into his robot mode. There's hardly any kibble at all. The back, look how neat that back is. I mean, no hollows. It's done really well. Actually, this is supposed to be up. So these are kind of faux gun pieces because G1 Megatron had these here, and when you do the transformation, there isn't actually any need for this bit. So they just made that like a fake piece to pop out and look good. The curves are actually, the side-on view from that leg is really nice. And I say that as a person who used to have a hand-painted t-shirt of the box art for G1 Megatron when I was a younger man. I would wear that all the time. And that curve is really, you know, it does that justice. Now, to get that curve, they had to do the extra wide grip that I did talk about in gun mode, which, you know, it's minor. I prefer the robot mode, and I like what they've done here. If you look at the legs from front on, you can see they're pretty wide legs, and some people might not like that. I don't really think the width, that extra width, is G1 toy accurate, or G1 cartoon accurate for that matter, but I do like it because it gives some equality between this and Optimus Prime. Optimus is always so bulky because obviously turning into a truck, a lot of mass has to go somewhere. And if you want Megatron to be his nemesis, you really need him to have sort of the similar size and strength. And MakeToys, by giving this width here, have allowed this Megatron toy to do something that most of the other ones haven't, which is put him on par with the mass of Optimus Prime. The ratchets, particularly in the arms, are done really well. So listen to this. There's a good quality, durable plastic in the teeth there, which is not going to wear out very easily. Spring loaded joint, so you can see the arm actually pulls out as the teeth force it out in that direction. So that is, you know, as good as it gets for joints. You can't do any better than that. I'm very happy with that, and it's plenty strong enough to hold the weight of this gun straight out in any position that you want. Now the gun isn't very heavy, so you could put other things in his hand and he could hold them at the same time. The other joints are also very good. Listen to this hip joint. Oh, it's beautiful to hear. And we've got clickiness in both directions. So this is a really quality toy, you know, and I don't feel as if it's going to break. I don't get very much friction sound like in some of my Toy World stuff. It sounds like there's a bit too much friction going on in those joints, whereas this MakeToys toy sounds perfectly engineered. I mean, it is a little stiff in the rotation of the leg, but I think that stiffness is primarily because it helps hold the handle straight in gun mode, which is really necessary. We've got clicks in the knee. Now this does bump into it a little bit. You can keep going up. It is double jointed, but much more than that, you end up with some kind of collisions happening, which you probably want to avoid. And the final joint worth noting, I mean there are others, is he has ab crunch. Check that out. So we've got the full range of motion in this toy, and if you're the kind of person who wants to take pictures, you can get some really awesome dynamic shots. Time for some comparisons. So the first one will be with my previous contender for Best Megatron, which was Xtransbots Apollon. Now, he has a lot of issues. At the time when I bought this, I was willing to turn a blind eye to some of them, and that's just because I didn't have anything for a Masterpiece Megatron. Size-wise and sculpt-wise, he was almost there, so, you know, I could tolerate it. He also has an ankle, actually the same ankle, causing stability issues, which I don't know why, but I guess that's just friction-based ankles for you. But he's just nothing. He's got nothing on this MakeToys toy. Just the quality. If you look at this plastic on Despotron here, it's not too toy-like, if that's the right way to put it. Whereas Xtransbots version, it just looks like a cheap plastic painted with a cheap silver paint. So this is much, much nicer. I'm not even sure if that comes up on camera in that way, but to the naked eye, this looks much more like a toy, and this looks much more like a collectible piece. If you already have Apollon and you're thinking, is it worth upgrading to get Despotron? I would say the answer is 100% yes. You can be satisfied with the way Apollon looks, but the fact is he's very unstable and he comes untabbed all over the place, falls over quite frequently, and just has these unnecessary bits of kibble floating around in robot mode. So is it worth another $150+ to fix those issues? For me, I think the answer is yes, because Despotron is just so clean cut in comparison. There's a world of difference between the two figures. Next up, we have the original Masterpiece Megatron, and you know, even at the time this came out, I was not in any way, shape or form happy with this as a robot figure. It looks pretty good in gun mode, but as a robot toy, it is just so far from Megatron. Look at the spindly little legs and the transformation showing, and his weirdly proportioned head. The gun, which is so big he can't hold it up, like his arm just doesn't have enough power in it to hold the gun up properly. So Megatron is, you know, you keep him, you buy him because he's Masterpiece, but it is not a very good toy. And if this is all you've got now, then I suggest just selling this as soon as you can and buying Despotron, because, man, this is a shit Megatron. Let's just be honest. It is not a good Megatron. Next up is the more Voyager-sized offering from Toy World. It's good for a classic style figure. I do like this. I'm not planning on getting rid of this anytime soon. I think if he was just a little bit bigger, he would go well with so much third-party stuff. But I'm still kind of happy with this. He can look okay if you pick the other members to go on the shelf with him. And, you know, these are different toys for different situations. They both have their merits. But probably the comparison that really matters the most is with Masterpiece, the current Masterpiece Prime. And boy, does it look good together. Look at that. The size is very, very similar. Like the width, the height, the bulk. They just look fantastic together. I'm so pleased with how they look together. It's made me want to pull Prime out again and put him on my shelf. He's been away for a little while now just because I had looked at him too much. I didn't, you know, got a bit sick of him. But standing next to Megatron, it's like they just popped out of the movie. It's really good to see. I mean, Megatron is just a tad shorter. His head is just a little bit under Prime there. I'm wondering if I can extend him up anymore, because these legs go down. No, I can't. I can maybe just extend the feet up a little bit. I think that puts them, with the feet fully extended, that puts them to be, looks like exactly the same. Two beautiful figures. The toy does come with an Energon mace. It seems a little bit large to me. Now, I'm not going to plug this in. I quite honestly, I don't really like this. I think it's because it's oversized. It seems like who could wield such a huge clunky thing? Has a metal chain, and I'm not going to do it. It just pops into the hand flips around. Now I had showed the Xtransbots Megatron a minute ago. He also comes with an Energon mace, and I'm just going to show the size comparison between the two. So I mean, the bigger one, the sculpt is a little bit better quality, I think. I feel that the points are out more, whereas this, you can see the screw holes more easily in there. That takes something away from it. But I think the size on this is closer to what I want. I mean, both good quality chains. So, you know, if you want, you could just grasp it in his hand and he could wield it by holding it instead of plugging it in. Let's just try and put that smaller one into his hand. Because he has a good firm grasp, you can definitely have it just hanging out of his hand. I mean, at the moment at least, while it's still nice and new, those pins in the fists are plenty strong enough to put anything in there. Now it doesn't come with its own Energon saber or Energon lightsaber, but again, I've pulled this one out of the box from Apollon and he can perfectly fine hold on to that. So maybe I'm not going to be able to sell my Apollon after all, or at least not with these weapons, because I like the way that looks. That's a really good weapon for him. Now, apart from that, probably the number one thing that I like him to have that he didn't come with is his gun, the blaster that he grabs from Transformers the movie that he shot Optimus Prime with. And again, here it is from Apollon. It fits in his hand perfectly and it's pretty nice looking. It's a very good accessory for this toy. Also, he can use Apollon's key for Vector Sigma. Stick that in there. Again, he can hold that nice and securely. The one accessory he can't use from the other figure is this helmet. Now, it slipped my mind exactly what this is from. I'm coming up with two ideas. Either this was the controlling helmet for the Robo Smasher, or maybe it was what helped him to control the Sentinels on Cybertron. But either way, it doesn't really fit on his head. I mean, this helmet can split in half, just a minute, like this, and should be able to peg in. But the reason it can't is that the little viewfinder here conflicts with the front of Megatron's head. So I guess I can try and force it. So the best I can do to get that to stay on is with that huge gap in there. If you took scissors and just snipped off that little side piece, then it would fit just fine. But it does look, the style doesn't really match. This toy is very modern and squared off, whereas that head is pure G1 goodness. Let's get this guy transformed. Alright, we're going to start off by opening up these arms. We're going to start off by opening up these arms and just getting the hands stowed away. When you do that, it'll flip out. This little bit from the back of the gun. Later we're going to turn that around. On the other side where the gun hand is, as you close it up, just be careful to make sure you slide that little groove that locks it in place. Fold in these faux details. Rotate this up like this. Now we're going to want to open this little flap and bring the lower part of the arm up. Just peg it back into where it was. Tab in each arm, one on each side. This is going to fold out like this and push it in just to lock it in. That tabs in up here. The opposite panel has this barrel attached to it, so we want to fold this out like this. We're going to slide the barrel up, tab that in. Barrel is going to actually lock in. You can see up here there's a little slot that goes into just to hold it nice and tight. Now's a good time to disengage this section and slide it up like that. Then, with caution, disengage the next section like so. So you can see we've got 3 distinct pieces here. Now the next bit is a little tricky. So you want to hold this trigger thing down, and we're going to rotate the center through like this. I don't, in words, picture tells 1,000 words. It's actually a little bit tricky to do. Next, we want this tab, so we're going to slide it till it's at the right spot and then press it in. So that's the resting spot for that. It just gives you the right spacing. The next thing we want to do is get rid of this little piece in here. So if we pull out on the chest, it lets us slide that. So now this is nice and flush. The other bit went underneath, and this tab, I needed to get that out of the way. To hide the head, we want to make sure that this sliding panel is fully up this way. And it can be, they've pulled his hat off. Let's just forget that for a second. It can be a little bit tricky to open this. So what I'm going to do is just pry it with something. I know this is probably not the best thing to do, but at least it works. Then we're going to rotate his head facing what is now forward, and there's a double hinge in here, so you want to bend it from the first hinge and then tilt the second hinge at an angle, otherwise it won't make the clearance. So it's a little bit tight, but you can do it. There we go. It's like a two-step motion. Now I'm just going to squeeze up on his helmet to make sure that it's not going to pop off. And it will actually tab in if you've got everything right. There we go. And then we can slide this over just to lock it in place. Next thing is to disengage this waist. Pop it right up like that. And you can kind of just hold this out of the way now. I'm going to start to transform this, but really just so that it's not in the way. What I want to do is fold this up and get the skirt out of the way at the same time. So that's it, like that. It has to go back. So you can see that was the front skirt, now it's at the back. This on the top was the groin. On these panels that I brought out, we're going to flip out this middle section so that it's facing forward like that, and then just manipulate it all so that it forms a nice flat panel. There's actually a little tab there that will guide you. At this point you can go ahead and lock the gun down, the top part. If you've done it right, it should be able to peg in. So, have I done that right? Yes. Now, importantly, while keeping his legs splayed, don't have them close together, we just want to rotate these into the forward direction. If you have them together, it won't get clearance of this groin section. So once they're together, then you can start to move them up like that. Now, inside one of these legs is a flap that we're going to pull out. Just doesn't want to come. Here we go. I'm going to keep this out like that. Then disengage the side panels of the legs. Looking at the other one, you have a different style, but you know, similar effect. And we're almost there. So now condense these legs, push the feet up. They actually slide, you can see here, little sliding mechanism. And the two legs will actually peg together. There's a tab in here, and if you can just get it right, a little bit fiddly, a little bit tricky, mainly because it's hard to see inside what you're pegging things into, but you'll feel it. Once it gets to the right tab holes, it suddenly becomes solid like that, and you know you've done the right thing. Alright, we're almost there. Now it's just a matter of shutting up all these extra panels. I forgot one thing. Before doing that, you've got to slide this out. Alright, now that one pegs into there, and it also pegs in at the back. Tabs in there. Rotate the little hammer up, pinch this in between the tabs at the rear, fold in. There we are. The final step. Megatron. Sweet. My final thoughts. This is a very, very nice figure. It was expensive. I'm just going to quote it in local dollars for me, but in my dollars, Australian dollars, I paid $200 for this, I think, after the conversion. Probably about $230 when it was shipped. So, you know, it is not cheap, but it is very good quality. The only issue that I have whatsoever that I'm not happy with was this ankle being a little bit floppy, so the figure fell over sometimes. I'm thinking that I can just pull that apart and screw it in a bit more. Can't really see, I can't see in there to see what kind of screw it is. It may not be a screw, it might be just a friction pin, because you got this expanding pin here on the other direction. So if it was the same as that, it's not tightenable. At least without some kind of polish, but except for that, it's made very well. The transformation is doable. Like any Megatron, it's a real pain in the ass, but I mean, you got to get from two very different modes, so that is at least understandable. The articulation is as good as you're going to get on any figure. Really good quality. If the ankle will hold it. The fit and finish, just how did the paint get applied? Like other paint tolerances, are they overlapping? They're not. They're all pretty crisp. I don't see any overspray. There isn't really that much paint on the figure. So I think that pretty much anyone would be happy to own this. I know Hasbro, or I shouldn't say Hasbro, I know Takara Tomy are coming out with their masterpiece just based on those leaked pictures. But the question I'm going to ask is, do you really want that masterpiece? So I've actually been skipping some of Masterpiece lately. The Ironhide, he really, to me, did not look as good as the iGear one that I already have, so I skipped him. The Hot Rod, I didn't really find it necessary to buy Hot Rod. I wasn't 100% happy with that mold, the way it looked, and I think there's some other Hot Rod toys coming up, so I gave him a skip. Shockwave, I gave Shockwave a skip because I was perfectly fine with my Fans Toys version of Shockwave. So do we really need, at this point, after we have all these Megatrons, another Megatron from Takara Tomy? And I guess it just depends on how he compares to the Optimus. From what I've seen of that Megatron, he looks a little bit more slender than this MakeToys version. Maybe they've tried to get the gun mode to be more accurate. If that's the case, I don't think I'm going to be wanting to buy that, because I like the robot mode primarily, and it doesn't matter to me how accurate the alt mode is. If the robot mode isn't on model for the cartoon, I don't feel like it's good value. And who knows how long it will be between now and when we see that Masterpiece Megatron. So for my money, I think this is probably as good as it gets. So that's pretty much the end of the review. I'm 99.9% happy with this toy. I can strongly recommend it. This has been MakeToys Despotron. I'm odeean. Thanks for watching.